Hello and welcome to the Winner Winner podcast by Welcome, where we speak with the Democratic Party candidates who prove they can win the middle, beat Republicans on Trump turf, and recalibrate the party to the median voter. Here at Welcome, we work to strengthen a centrist faction that wins and governs responsibly. We support centrist Democrats running in Trump districts through Welcome Pack. Today, I'm excited to be in conversation with Dr. Jasmeet Bains, who's running for Congress in California's 22nd Congressional District against Republican David Valadao. Dr. Bains is a frontline physician and California State Assemblymember. The first South Asian woman elected to the Assembly, Dr. Bains has been a fearless, independent voice and vote, bucking special interests to protect the Central Valley's economy and healthcare access. California's 22nd Congressional District sits in the Central Valley, anchored in Bakersfield and stretching north toward the Fresno suburbs. It is a heavily working-class district shaped by agriculture, energy, and logistics, where voters are primarily driven by the cost of living, water access, fuel prices, and job stability. Following new maps adopted after Proposition 50 in 2025, the district has been significantly reshaped, altering its political landscape ahead of the 2026 cycle. California 22 now has a PVI of D+1, and Trump won the district by 1.8 points in 2024. The district is on the DCCC's Districts and Playlist, a possible precursor to Red to Blue. Dr. Bains, welcome to the Winner Winner podcast, and so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm sure you've been super busy this week, so thanks for taking some time, but I'm really excited to talk about your candidacy. And this is one of the districts everyone has their sights on this election cycle, and we're super, super stoked about supporting you. You are on our Win the Middle slate, and we're just really thrilled not only for your leadership, but your candidacy to run for Congress. So talk to me more about your life, what it looked like before you ran for public office, before you were even in the state assembly, and how your leadership in the public health realm has been so important to the people in your district.
Yeah, thank you so much. I grew up in rural California, Delano. My father worked as an auto mechanic at the local dealership. My mom was trying to raise 3 kids. I had my grandparents living with us. And Delano is such a unique place in the state of California. It's the community of immigrants. I'm the daughter of immigrants, and you had such a mixture of Filipino, Hispanic, Indian communities. It really was a collecting point, still is a collecting point for immigrants. Actually, on the Delano sign, it says Community of Immigrants. And I'm proud to represent my hometown in the assembly. I'm proud to be the local doc. But taking it back a step, growing up in Delano, I can't say that I grew up thinking I would be a physician or a politician. I didn't see any women physicians. My pediatrician was a man. All the doctors that were there were men. I didn't grow up seeing women politicians that looked like me. Honestly, most kids that grow up in Delano, one of their biggest ambitions is just making it to their 18th birthday. Delano is a center point for a lot of gang violence, a lot of different disparities when it comes to low socioeconomic areas in the state of California. It's a lot of hard stories, but it's also the stories of true resilience. I think I get inspired by my community every single day because I see how hard they're working. And I'm in the clinic on my weekends listening to those problems, in addition to being a voice on the state assembly floor. So I was a person that should have fallen through the cracks, like very many people that grew up in Delano, California. But I had a grandma that pushed me. I had a grandma that noticed when I wasn't doing things the right way. And I had a grandma that would get in my face and be like, nope, you're not going to do that. I really, really, just want to take a moment and thank my mom, my dad, my grandma, grandpa on my dad's side, my mom's mom. They were the true people that kept me accountable to who I am today. And after I got elected, I made 2 promises. One was to my dad and one was to my mom that they made me make. And my dad, on election night, when we found out that I won by 60% against a known politician, I had 0 political experience. All I had was my community of Central California, my hometown of Delano. And I had my election night right there in Delano, and we saw the numbers. initially when my mom saw 60%, as an Asian mother, she goes, that's 60% is an F. And I was like, Mom, in elections, this is actually a really good, like, we won, Mom. She's like, yeah, but 60%.
That's so good.
But, it was such a great night. And that night, my mom and dad made me promise. They each had their both individual promises. My grandparents are gone now. They've left me. But my dad made me promise that I'd never use my position to influence myself. And my mom made me promise that I would always remember that I'm a doctor first, and I would continue working as a physician in my hometown of Delano. And at that time, I made those promises very easily because I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Like, yeah, I won. Like, I had just won an election, something that I was an underdog. I should not have won. That should not have happened. It was a huge upset. But at that time, I'm like, yeah, sure. That didn't seem like a hard thing to give. But once you get into the assembly, you see the Monday through Thursday schedule, and then, driving back. And then, it was hard, but I kept my promise to my mom and I kept my promise to my dad. And those two things are what kept me grounded to be that voice of the middle. I really have a problem with people that have this notion that I don't need to work with the other side, that I am right and everybody else is wrong, and it's either me or nothing. No. As a physician, I'm trained to listen to the problems and to create a treatment plan and to listen to the concerns of my patient. At the same time, make sure that they're getting the proper information to make the right outcome. You have to work with both sides. And I really am worried about the state of politics right now, where you have a lot of people that basically say, I am right and I don't need to work with anyone else. Those are still your constituents. Those are still voters in the district. You can't dismiss the people in your district that have a certain following or a certain idea politically. You have to be that person in the middle. And I really worry about the state of politics where there's a lot of people that do not want to listen to the other side and have totally dismissed the other side. And I think that's kind of why we are where we are in politics. It's very divisive. You have two sides that don't want to listen to each other. And we really need to build from the middle to create people that will not let the pendulum swing to the right or left, but be responsible to hold that pendulum in the middle. That's what voters want to see. And that's what they need. That's what this country really needs right now.
100%. And, to your point about the polarization, being able to meet people where they are, compromise, negotiate, et cetera, is really valuable in not only leadership in political office, but in day-to-day life when you are speaking with your patients. And to your point, the promise that you made to your parents was to continue practicing. And you have kept that promise, which is genuinely so remarkable, Dr. Bains. Like, I really do commend you because you're serving in the state assembly, you're serving patients, and you're running for Congress. Like, that is no easy feat. So thank you for your leadership and your sacrifice in that. Can you talk a little bit more about your continuation as a physician? You even volunteered in the front lines of the fires in California. I think this was last year, the year before. Can you talk more about your role as a community physician, how people view you not only as a legislator, but as a doctor, as someone they can go to for medical help? Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, just like my life, the one thing that my upbringing always taught me is, whenever there's a problem, work towards it and continue, being that solution for that problem. So I became a family med physician, and I was working in my rural area of Top California, and I was noticing an emergence of fentanyl that was breaking in California. This was around 2017, 2018. And that encouraged me to get my primary care psychiatric fellowship, which I completed, and I created some of the first addiction services in that area. I became the medical director of Bakersfield Recovery Services. We created resources for people suffering from addiction. I created the first service for women that are pregnant that are addicted to heroin. I created the MAT service program for them. And then COVID hit, and the state needed me to help work on the front lines of COVID. Because of my expertise in rural areas, I worked in an area that was an hour away from a hospital. I was the only doctor at a FQHC there. So at a time where this actually hit the New York Times, where they were reaching out to rural physicians and asking about how they're creating drive-through clinics for COVID. And my quote that was quoted in New York Times was like, "I don't know what you're talking about on drive-through. My patients walk to my clinic. I got to create walk-through clinics. My patients are not privileged enough to even own their own transportation." And that really turned heads, and it really created the reality of a lot of rural areas that are left behind. So the state recruited me. I am the chief medical officer for the Emergency Medical Services Authority for the Central Valley. So I oversee, any disasters that break out in the entire state of California. I've been doing that since, I think it was 2018, 2019 is when I joined on that. I joined on COVID. I helped build surge hospitals across during COVID. And then during COVID, we also had our historical disastrous fires around 2018. And I was stationed out at the creek fires, the glass fires, the bluffs. I was out there as well, providing services to first responders and evacuees, medical services, and basically creating a tent in the middle of a parking lot and providing healthcare services out there. And during COVID, building the surge hospitals, which is really unique at that time to build an entire hospital in the middle of a parking lot. I think we really need to do a digest on that and all the work that went into doing that. And after I got elected, I was able to continue serving on that. I continued working in my community clinic, in addition to working to increase services for addiction through legislation. I created the first inpatient detox in my community for Medicaid patients. And then I continued efforts with the disaster unit, where I went out to the LA fires. I was stationed out there providing healthcare. And then the recent deployment was the Gifford fire, which was also a very big fire this past, it was in October. And whenever there's a big disaster that hits, I get the call. I have a deployment bag in my car that's ready to go 24/7. And I am ready to get in my Jeep and run out to where the next disaster is. And it's an honor. It's an honor to have the skill set that I have to serve my community and to protect my community, and to really be able to understand the vulnerabilities of communities when it comes to addiction care, when it comes to being a community doctor, when it comes to being a disaster doctor. I'm there when people need me, and it's an honor that I'm able to do.
Yeah, and genuinely thank you for your service to so many, because like I said, I'm sure people look to you not just for your political leadership, but for you show up for them, right? You're the face that they see and they respect and appreciate when things are not right. And so, in that vein of, you said protecting and serving and defending and fighting, basically, there's a lot of narrative about, we have to fight this and we have to fight Trump and da, which is fine, whatever. People do what they want to do. But when you think about your political leadership distinctly, your ability to be able to be very independent minded and serve like truly the interests and the sentiments and the perspectives of the people in your district. And Cal Matters wrote in the paper, Bains has never been particularly shy about voting no, even if it irks her Democratic colleagues, reflecting her willingness to put her constituents ahead of political convenience. Where does this, like, you're genuinely fighting for people come from? And it's not just about like, oh, we're going to fight to, save democracy. Like, obviously that's all fine and good, but it's like you have an actual genuine fight in you to serve people, to protect people and defend people. Where does this come from? And in what ways have you fought for your constituents against even Democratic Party interests?
Yeah, look, I never studied politics growing up. And this is not a knock to people that study politics. I think it's very noble to study politics. But for me, my story, I have not studied politics. I grew up in an area where politics is very divisive and people don't even want to hear about politics. My parents immigrated here. We are happy and proud Democrats. It's the party of immigrants. It's the party that really worked towards protecting immigrants. And that was important to my mother and father and my grandparents. I've been a Democrat my entire life, and I'm proud of it. But at the same time, when you are elected to represent an area, I think a lot of politicians quickly forget that it's the voters. It's you are representing that area, that district, the constituents. You're not representing the Democratic Party. You're not representing the Republican Party. You're representing those people that voted for you. And so when when I got up to Sacramento, and the very first vote I took was not to destroy oil and gas, which my community relies on that for jobs. It relies on that for healthcare. And I had a firsthand knowledge on that when I was out in Taft providing care as the only doctor out there. I saw the demonization of the oil industries, but what I saw as a doctor was people lose access to healthcare insurance, and the people that died because they could not get access to life-saving medications. In a lot of ways, the Central Valley was left behind in a pursuit for a transition. And then people get very divisive. Oh, you're against No, and this is about listening to the other side, not getting so into the I am right, everybody else is wrong. Please take a second. Listen to the stories of why people do certain things. Why did Dr. Bains, as a Democrat, was the only Democrat that in the entire legislature that voted against decimating oil and gas? Dr. Bains represents a community that relies on that for jobs, and that's access to healthcare. You cannot fight corporations and also fight for access for healthcare at the same time, because the reality is those corporations are providing that access to healthcare insurance in those areas. And what we found in Sacramento, because of the policies, because of the decimation of industries in the Central Valley, now we have the most amount of patients in the state and country that rely on Medicaid, because those private insurances were being provided by the industry. So I literally have this view of literally what's happening due to the policies of Sacramento and the policies of DC. Sacramento shut down our industries, which is access to private insurance. And as a physician, any physician can tell you we want our patients to have good private healthcare insurance. Medicaid is a Band-Aid. It doesn't cover anything. It does not cover those vital medications. There's always changes and cuts to it. And then you have DC that cut it by $1 trillion. And then they added work requirements on an area that has inadequate access to job. You literally took away everything from this community overnight. These are people, my constituents are people that don't care about Democrat or Republican because they've been screwed by both. My independent streak happens because I'm a doctor. I studied medicine. I studied healthcare disparities. I'm a community doctor. So my training as a family doc was understanding the holistic community aspect. I'm not just writing a prescription for their heart health. I'm also taking into my brain their socioeconomic environment. Is the patient going to be able to afford the gas to put in their car to make it to my clinic? If you see right now, there's studies that are coming out saying that inhalers cause air pollution, and they're about to take away inhalers. So really, really take a step back, everyone, and think about Yes, we want to control air pollution. Yes, we want to preserve the environment. I am a big person that is going to protect the environment all around, but I'm also going to protect my community. I'm going to protect my community from extremist ideas that are shutting down access to healthcare because my people need to breathe. My people need that inhaler. My people need access because we have the worst air pollution in the entire state and country. This is an area that's very unique, and there is not a paper cut solution for this community. And this is why you cannot have extremists that represent this community, because as my opponent likes to say, he is fighting for the soul of the Democratic Party. I'm fighting for the soul of the Valley. I'm fighting for my community, not fighting for a party, not fighting to represent this or that. The only thing that Dr. Bains is fighting for is for the Valley, to save her patients, to bring back healthcare, because it's my patients, it's my constituents, it's my voters that I will always listen to over any political idea or anything political party, because this is a very unique area. And after I graduated residency, I went out to rural Taft, No doctor does that. No doctor decides, oh, I just graduated my residency and I'm going to go work out in rural California where there's decimation of the oil companies. And at that same time, there's a federal prison that provided jobs that also shut down. So it was just a double whammy for this community. And the things that I saw there are what shaped me. The things and my experiences that I saw in rural California is what shapes and what I bring to the floor of the assembly. And at the same time, it's my experiences in the clinic on the weekend, because I get to see in real time the impacts of legislation as I go back to provide healthcare on the weekends. This is an area that needs a person that's not going to adhere to fighting for the soul of a party, but are going to be strong and say, I'm fighting for the soul of the Valley. I am here to represent the Valley, and has really done the work and been out to those areas and provided services and listened to, not listening to a party, but listen to the people and what their needs are. I wish we had more politicians like that. I really do.
And we thank you because you're doing the work that's needed to regain the trust that has been lost, not only in the Central Valley, but across rural America. This is quite literally the story of why, and my colleague Adam Frisch always talks about how many counties that Biden won versus how many counties that Bill Clinton won. It's a very big difference. We're not winning the counties. We're not winning the rural areas because, to your point, if you're self-interested in the Democratic Party, people are going to be like, oh, so you care more about the party than my vote or my life, for that matter? That's nuts. That is a disservice to Americans. So thank you. So speaking of the Central Valley, we are good friends with our friend Congressman Adam Gray. You're good friends with our friend Congressman Adam Gray. You guys are fellow Central Valley leaders. And just thinking about the Central Valley, or even the Valleycrat mindset that you guys, the phrase that you guys have used, what is it about the Central Valley that you think the party in general is missing right now? And you've spoken a bit about this, about the oil industry and healthcare, but generally speaking, how does that scale to other parts of rural America or other parts of even just states in general that are red states or red areas or red districts, that you think that your candidacy and your leadership in Congress will contribute to helping the overall party actually regain trust among voters in these types of regions?
Yeah, no, Congressman Adam Gray has been such a great voice for the Valley. And, he flipped a red seat. He is the example of what is needed to bring that pendulum to the middle. So shout out to him and shout out to all of his efforts. He's been a great friend for me. And I know he's, been wanting me to run for this seat. And I was like, I'm good. I'm in the assembly. I just won my reelection. I don't need to do this. The talks were happening about the healthcare cuts. And I really did not think that David Valadao would have voted for that. He kept saying he wasn't going to. So I took the person for his word. Look, I can't control my party. I'm not going to blame him if he can't control his party. At the same time, I've had to take on my party. He's challenged his party in the past. So I had full faith, just like everyone else in the Valley, that he would do the right thing. But then he didn't.
Yeah.
And that was really opened a lot of people's eyes, because we really did, because he kept saying he wasn't going to vote for it. And I think when it comes to the Valley, and, Congressman Adam Gray will know this well, your word is your bond. If you give your word that you're not going to do something, or that you're going to do something, people really rely that you will follow through on that action. And when they saw that and this is the thing about the Valley, people understand how hard it is to represent the Valley. They're not going to blame you for the entire actions of your party. They will vote in a Democrat or a Republican, or this is a swing area. What makes it a swing area? Because they understand that the party in a whole, you can't hold the legislator responsible for what the party does. But what you can hold them responsible for is if they're going to represent the Valley over the party. And David Valadao has in the past stood up for the Valley. And in this instant, it surprised me. It surprised a lot of people. I did not announce for this seat until I saw David Valadao vote for that big, beautiful bill. I'll never forget it. It was July 2nd, my 40th birthday. I literally turned 40, and it was the worst birthday ever, because I saw the decimation of healthcare on my 40th birthday, and to a person that has dedicated her career to protecting vulnerable communities, to a person that has dedicated her career for showing up and being there for her constituents against any party, against any agenda. Seeing the decimation of healthcare on her 40th birthday, I knew the decision at that time was right. And I remember I got a text from Congressman Adam Gray right away. He's like, "Are you ready?" I'm like, "Yep, happy birthday to me." So we got together and I decided to run at that time. But I was not thinking about running until I saw that vote come in. And this is where I have a big problem with people that state that they're fighting for the soul of the Democratic Party, or I'm fighting for the soul of the Republican Party. That really speaks volumes to what their agenda is. They're not fighting for the soul of the Valley, because the Valley is very unique. One solution is not going to cover the problems of the Valley. You have to understand the Valley. You have to understand the impact of legislation. You have to understand, if this happens, then that is going to pass the buck on to the consumer. Or if this happens, that's going to pass the buck on to this, because this is an area that represents some of the biggest vulnerabilities in the state and country. And what I really don't understand is why we can't prioritize the most vulnerable. People want to talk about religion. They want to talk about scriptures. And in every single scripture, every single religion, it states, take care of the vulnerable, and God will take care of you. How do we forget that in politics? How did we forget that protecting our vulnerable communities is how we protect the entire country? You have to prioritize the vulnerable communities. And the Valley is one of the most vulnerable communities in the state and country. I could rattle off a million healthcare statistics of the worst healthcare outcomes in the Valley. I could rattle off a million socioeconomic statistics of the statistics in the Valley. You name every bad statistic out there, and we own it in a bad way. And you've had a lot of politicians that have campaigned on healthcare and said, oh, I'm going to do this and that. And nothing's been done about healthcare in the Valley. We've never had a physician represent the Valley in Congress. This is where, if we want to get things right, we got to get that expert to the table, and not just any expert, but an expert that has real health policy understanding and understands the impacts of what's going to happen and how critical every movement is and what that impact is going to be to the district.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we wrap this up, I just want to take a moment and thank every single person that's voted for me in the past, every single person that believes in me, that believes in this campaign, that really sees that my intentions are exactly pure from the community, always from the community. Thank you to my community for believing in me, because that night when I saw that I won by 60%, total newcomer, had zero political experience, all I knew is like medicine, and seeing my community rally behind me, and then seeing my community rally behind me again in my reelection during the biggest reddest shift. Thank you to all of my constituents. Thank you to all my voters for believing in me. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that moment where I saw my community rise and they chose me. They believed in me. And the answer to your question, what really brings me to my independence streak, my community chose me, and I will always choose them. And I will always be grateful for the opportunity that they gave me.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Bains. You are remarkable, and again, just great servant leader in every respect. So thank you so much for serving. Guys, Dr. Bains is running for Congress, so please support her. She is part of our Win the Middle slate, as I mentioned. So please give her money, support her in any way that you can. If you're in the Central Valley, go knock some doors for her. Just please make sure that she feels supported, seen, appreciated, because she should be all of those things. Dr. Bains, you are wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today, and really looking forward to getting you into Congress in November.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Have a great day. Bye-bye.